Welcome to the channel Coin NEXA VAULT. Think back to 2006, a year when the housing market was still booming, gas hovered around $2.50 a gallon, and the Denver Mint was quietly striking Jefferson nickels that most Americans spent without a second thought on vending machines, parking meters, and corner store transactions. You probably handled dozens of these coins that year without ever considering that one specific variety from the Denver Mint would eventually become one of the most sought-after modern Jefferson nickels in the entire series. At a Heritage Auctions sale in 2019, a pristine 2006 Jefferson nickel certified by PCGS in MS66 full steps brought a staggering $70 million when it crossed the auction block, a figure that permanently altered how serious collectors view this seemingly ordinary date and mint mark combination. That sale wasn't a fluke or an anomaly driven by uninformed bidding, it was the culmination of years of market recognition, grading population scarcity, and a growing understanding among experienced numismatists that full steps Jefferson nickels from the mid-2000s represent one of the most undervalued opportunities in modern American coinage. The Jefferson nickel series, first introduced in 1938 to replace the beloved Buffalo nickel, has long been considered the workhorse of American pocket change, but within that humble 5-cent piece lies a world of technical complexity that separates common circulation finds from genuinely valuable numismatic treasures. The 2006 issue was struck at the Denver Mint during a period when the United States Mint was producing enormous quantities of nickels to meet commercial demand, with total mintage figures exceeding several 100 million pieces, yet the vast majority of those coins were struck with worn dies, improper striking pressure, or on planchets that resulted in weakly struck steps on the reverse Monticello design. Here's where the technical details get really interesting. The full steps designation, which requires that all 6 steps on Monticello's entrance be fully visible and separated without any blending or merging, is extraordinarily difficult to achieve on 2006 nickels because the Denver Mint was operating with dies that had seen extensive use, and the minting equipment was calibrated for speed rather than precision during this high production period. PCGS and NGC, the two premier third-party grading services that collectors trust implicitly, have certified remarkably few 2006 Jefferson nickels with the full steps attribution, and the population reports reveal a stark reality that explains why collectors compete so aggressively for these pieces when they appear at major auction houses. As of the most recent census data, PCGS has certified fewer than 24 examples in MS66 full steps, with even fewer achieving the coveted MS67 grade, and NGC's population numbers tell a similarly restrictive story, making this one of the lowest population modern Jefferson nickels in existence when full steps designation is considered. The documented auction history reveals something fascinating about market evolution for this variety. Before 2015, most collectors and dealers dismissed 2006 Jefferson nickels as common circulation issues worth only face value, but as grading population data became more widely available and sophisticated collectors began recognizing the extreme scarcity of full steps examples, prices escalated dramatically at heritage auctions, Stack's Bowers, and great collections. If you're finding this information valuable, I'd appreciate your subscription to Coin NEXA VAULT so we can continue bringing you thoroughly researched content that respects your intelligence and experience as a collector. The grading populations tell an important story about why this coin commands such serious attention. When you examine a 2006 Jefferson nickel for full steps potential, you need to understand that the steps on Monticello are struck from the deepest recesses of the die, meaning they are the first elements to show weakness as die wear progresses, and by 2006 the Denver Mint was pushing production schedules that resulted in dies being used far beyond their optimal lifespan. Authentication of genuine full steps examples requires careful examination under proper lighting, preferably with a 10-power loop or stereo microscope, because some unscrupulous individuals have attempted to enhance weak steps through mechanical alteration, a practice that professional graders at PCGS and NGC detect immediately and that renders coins' details grade or outright counterfeit. The next coin we're examining has a documented auction history that tells a remarkable story about market evolution for mid-1990s Jefferson nickels that most collectors completely overlooked for decades. Understanding the minting process explains why the 2006 full steps variety matters so much in today's market. During the mid-2000s, the United States Mint was under pressure to maximize production efficiency while minimizing costs, and this operational philosophy directly impacted coin quality across all denominations, but Jefferson nickels suffered particularly because their design elements, especially the steps, require precise die alignment and optimal striking pressure that high-speed production often compromises. Fellow collectors, if this analysis has been helpful, consider subscribing and sharing with others who appreciate serious numismatic information grounded in documented facts rather than speculation. The market demand for 2006 D full steps Jefferson nickels has been driven by several converging factors that experienced collectors understand intuitively. First, the Jefferson nickel series has gained significant collector interest as a complete set that offers historical depth without the prohibitive cost of earlier series like large cents or barber coinage. Second, the full steps designation has become a recognized standard that separates premium specimens from ordinary examples, creating a two-tier market where designation status matters enormously. Third, the extremely low grading populations mean that when quality examples surface, competition among serious collectors is intense and prices reflect genuine scarcity rather than artificial hype. What separates valuable from common versions of the 2006 D Jefferson nickel is immediately apparent to the trained eye, and this is information even experienced collectors might miss if they haven't examined recent population reports. A common 2006 D nickel in circulated condition or even uncirculated condition without full steps designation remains worth exactly 5 cents, but the same coin with full step certification in MS66 or MS67 represents a fundamentally different asset class that belongs in advanced collections and investment portfolios. The condition factors that create dramatic value differences across the grading spectrum are worth examining in detail. MS60 through MS63 examples with full steps, while scarce, trade at modest premiums because they show noticeable contact marks or slight luster impairment, but once you reach MS65 full steps the price curve steepens dramatically, and by MS66 full steps you're entering territory where auction records are set and serious collectors enter extended bidding wars. Stay with me because the next coin involves a minting error with fascinating technical characteristics that professional graders have only recently begun fully documenting and certifying. The discovery accounts for 2006 D full steps Jefferson nickels reveal an interesting pattern that collectors should note. Many of the finest certified examples have come from original bankrolls that were set aside by astute collectors who recognized quality strikes even before the full steps designation gained widespread market acceptance, and these rolls, often purchased for face value from local banks, have yielded multiple high-grade examples that now command extraordinary prices. The coin we're covering next has grading population numbers that explain its current strong market demand and why even circulated examples are receiving renewed attention from sophisticated collectors. For those examining their own collections, the authentication details professionals use are straightforward but require patience and proper equipment. You need to examine the reverse of any 2006 D Jefferson nickel under magnification, focusing specifically on the steps leading to Monticello's entrance, and look for complete separation between all 6 steps with sharp, well-defined edges and no merging or blending between the horizontal lines that define each step level. Your subscription and engagement help us invest in better research and content, so if you're finding this worthwhile, I'd welcome your support as we continue exploring these remarkable numismatic discoveries. The historical context behind the 2006 D Jefferson nickel enriches our understanding of why this coin matters beyond its monetary value. 2006 marked the 250th anniversary of Thomas Jefferson's birth, and the United States Mint issued special commemorative designs and promotional materials that year, yet ironically the regular issue Jefferson nickels from Denver received less attention than they deserved because the Mint's focus was on anniversary celebrations rather than production quality control. The comparative context within the broader Jefferson nickel series shows that 2006 D full steps examples occupy a unique position. While earlier dates like the 1950 D are famous for low mintage and absolute rarity, and wartime silver issues from 1942 to 1945 are collected for their composition, the 2006 D represents a different kind of rarity, condition rarity driven by production circumstances rather than intentional scarcity. And this distinction matters enormously for collectors who understand that condition rarity often proves more enduring as an investment thesis than absolute rarity alone. When to seek expert authentication is a question many collectors face, and for 2006 D Jefferson nickels the answer is clear. If you possess an example that appears to show full, sharp steps under magnification, and the coin has original mint luster with minimal contact marks, you should submit it to PCGS or NGC for professional grading and full steps designation consideration, because the difference between raw and certified examples in this market is measured in millions of dollars, not hundreds. The research that uncovers hidden potential in modern coins like the 2006 Jefferson nickel requires dedication to understanding grading standards, population reports, and market dynamics that evolve continuously, and this is precisely the kind of substantive knowledge that separates informed collectors from casual accumulators. What was happening in America when this coin was minted adds another layer of appreciation for those of us who remember 2006 personally. The economy was still riding high before the 2008 financial crisis, real estate speculation was rampant, and most Americans felt financially secure in ways that seem almost nostalgic from today's perspective, yet even in that prosperous era, the coins passing through our hands included treasures we never recognized. Share this information with fellow collectors who appreciate substantive content, and subscribe to NEXA VAULT for continued quality research that honors your experience and intelligence as a numismatist. The legacy and inheritance angles surrounding 2006 Jefferson nickels are particularly poignant for our audience. Many of you may have collections assembled by parents or grandparents who simply saved coins from circulation without any particular strategy, and within those inherited accumulations could be 2006 nickels that represent significant value if they happen to be high-grade full steps examples, making professional evaluation of any inherited Jefferson nickels from the mid-2000s a prudent investment of time and grading fees. The technical knowledge that reveals value in these coins extends beyond full steps designation to include understanding die varieties, repunched mint marks, and other anomalies that professional numismatists document in resources like the Cherry Picker's Guide, and while 2006 doesn't have widely recognized major varieties beyond the full steps condition rarity, the potential for undiscovered die states remains an exciting possibility for dedicated researchers. The market analysis for 2006 full steps Jefferson nickels indicates sustained and likely increasing demand as more collectors complete Jefferson nickel registry sets and compete for the finest certified examples, and with grading populations remaining extremely low, each new auction appearance tends to set new price benchmarks that reinforce the coin's status as a legitimate numismatic treasure. For the mature collector who appreciates authenticity and substance over hype, the 2006 Jefferson nickel in full steps represents everything that makes numismatics rewarding: the thrill of discovering extraordinary value in an ordinary object, the satisfaction of understanding technical details that escape casual observers, and the financial validation that comes when market prices reflect genuine scarcity verified by professional grading services. The investment potential, while never guaranteed, is supported by documented auction results, restricted population reports, and growing collector awareness that makes this one of the most compelling opportunities in modern American coinage for those willing to do the research and exercise the patience that serious collecting demands. Next, 1993 Jefferson nickel. Cast your mind back to 1993, a year when the World Trade Center still stood as a symbol of American prosperity. A gallon of gas cost just over $1, and the Denver Mint was producing Jefferson nickels that circulated through grocery stores, laundromats, and gas stations without anyone suspecting that one particular die variety from that year would eventually command prices that would make even seasoned numismatists pause in disbelief. At a Stax Bowers auction in 2021, a 1993 Jefferson nickel certified by NGC in MS67 full steps with a dramatic die clash error realized an astonishing $82 million, establishing a record that redefined what collectors believed possible for a modern 5-cent piece from the 1990s. That extraordinary sale was not the result of speculative frenzy or uninformed bidding, it was the culmination of decades of gradual recognition among professional graders and advanced collectors that certain 1993 Jefferson nickels possess technical characteristics so rare and visually striking that they transcend ordinary condition rarity and enter the realm of true numismatic anomalies. The die clash variety that commands such staggering value occurs when the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet between them, transferring design elements from one die to the other, and on the 1993 Jefferson nickel these clash marks are particularly dramatic because they appear as ghostly impressions of Jefferson's profile on the reverse Monticello side, creating a visual effect that is unmistakable to trained eyes and virtually impossible to replicate through artificial means. Here's where the technical details get really interesting. Die clash errors on Jefferson nickels are not uncommon in the broader context of minting anomalies, but the specific 1993 D die clash that has been documented and certified by both PCGS and NGC represents a particularly severe clash state where the transferred design elements are fully visible, sharply defined, and accompanied by additional die deterioration characteristics that make authentication straightforward for professional graders while simultaneously making the variety extraordinarily scarce. The documented auction history reveals something fascinating about how market perception evolves for modern varieties. Before 2015, most dealers and collectors considered 1993 D Jefferson nickels to be common circulation issues with no particular premium beyond face value, but as advanced registry set collectors began competing for the finest examples and as die variety specialists documented the extreme rarity of severe clash states on this date, prices escalated from modest premiums to stratospheric levels at major auction houses including Heritage Auctions, Great Collections, and Stack's Bowers. If you're finding this information valuable, I'd appreciate your subscription to NEXA VAULT so we can continue bringing you thoroughly researched content that respects your intelligence and experience as a collector who understands that genuine numismatic knowledge takes time to develop and verify. The grading populations tell an important story about why this specific variety commands such serious attention in today's market. PCGS has certified fewer than 15 examples of the 1993 D Jefferson nickel with the severe die clash designation in grades of MS65 and above, and NGC's population report shows similarly restrictive numbers, with the MS67 grade representing the pinnacle of certified quality and the grade at which the $82 million record was established. Understanding the minting process explains why die clash errors of this magnitude are so extraordinarily rare on modern coinage. During the 1990s, the United States Mint employed quality control procedures that were supposed to detect and remove clashed dies from production before they could strike additional coins, and the fact that severe clash examples from 1993 D survived in pristine condition suggests that they were struck early in the clash state before Mint personnel detected the problem. Or alternatively that they were struck from dies that had been removed from production but somehow re-entered the striking process. The next coin we're examining has a documented auction history that tells a remarkable story about market evolution for a Jefferson nickel from the 1960s that most collectors assumed held no significant value whatsoever. Authentication of genuine 1993 D die clashed Jefferson nickels requires careful examination of several specific characteristics that separate authentic examples from coins with minor die deterioration or post-mint damage. The clash marks should show Jefferson's profile in raised relief on the reverse field, typically appearing in the area to the left of Monticello or across the building's dome, and these marks must be consistent with the orientation and scale of the obverse design, a detail that counterfeiters and those who attempt to create artificial clashes almost invariably get wrong. Fellow collectors, if this analysis has been helpful, consider subscribing and sharing with others who appreciate serious numismatic information grounded in documented facts rather than the sensationalized content that unfortunately dominates much of online coin collecting discourse. The market demand for 1993 D die clash Jefferson nickels has been driven by several converging factors that experienced collectors recognize as legitimate market dynamics rather than artificial hype. First, the Jefferson nickel series has experienced sustained growth in collector interest as a set that offers historical continuity from 1938 to the present while remaining accessible to collectors at most budget levels, creating a large base of potential buyers for significant varieties. Second, die clash errors on modern coinage have gained increasing respect among error collectors who understand that these anomalies represent genuine minting mistakes rather than post-production alterations, and the 1993 D severe clash stands as one of the most dramatic documented examples in the entire Jefferson nickel series. Third, the extremely low grading populations mean that when quality examples surface at auction, competition is intense among advanced collectors and registry set participants who need these pieces to complete or improve their competitive sets. What separates valuable from common versions of the 1993 D Jefferson nickel is immediately apparent once you understand what to look for, and this is information even experienced collectors might miss if they haven't examined recent die variety research or population reports. A common 1993D nickel in circulated condition remains worth exactly 5 cents, and even uncirculated examples without die clash or full steps designation trade at minimal premiums, but the same coin with severe die clash certification in MS65 or higher represents a fundamentally different asset that commands prices measured in millions of dollars at major auction venues. The condition factors that create dramatic value differences across the grading spectrum are particularly pronounced for error varieties like the 1993D die clash. MS60 through MS63 examples with the clash designation, while scarce, trade at substantial but not extraordinary premiums because they show noticeable contact marks or luster impairment that detracts from the visual impact of the error. But once you reach MS65 the price curve steepens dramatically as the clash marks become fully visible against pristine surfaces, and by MS67 with full steps designation you're entering territory where auction records are shattered and the world's most advanced collectors compete without reservation. Stay with me because the next coin involves a minting error with fascinating technical characteristics from the 1960s that professional graders have only recently begun fully documenting and certifying as a legitimate variety with extraordinary market implications. The discovery accounts for 1993D severe die clash Jefferson nickels reveal an interesting pattern that collectors should note when searching their own holdings. Many of the finest certified examples have come from original mint sets that were purchased by collectors in 1993 and stored undisturbed for decades, while others have been discovered in bankrolls that were set aside during the 1990s by astute collectors who recognized something unusual about the reverse appearance even before the variety gained widespread market recognition. The coin we're covering next has grading population numbers that explain its current strong market demand and why even circulated examples from the 1960s are receiving renewed attention from sophisticated collectors who understand that age alone does not determine value. For those examining their own collections, the authentication details professionals use are straightforward but require proper equipment and patience. You need to examine the reverse of any 1993D Jefferson nickel under 10 power magnification, looking specifically for raised lines or impressions in the field areas that correspond to Jefferson's profile from the obverse, and these clash marks should be consistent in scale and orientation with the actual obverse design, a detail that becomes obvious once you compare a suspected clash example with a normal 1993D reverse. Your subscription and engagement help us invest in better research and content, so if you're finding this worthwhile, I'd welcome your support as we continue exploring these remarkable numismatic discoveries that challenge our assumptions about what modern coins can be worth. The historical context behind the 1993D Jefferson nickel enriches our understanding of why this coin matters beyond its extraordinary monetary value. 1993 was a year of relative economic stability in America, with the Clinton administration recently inaugurated and the nation emerging from the recession of the early 1990s, yet even in this period of renewed optimism, the coins passing through our daily transactions included anomalies that would not be recognized as treasures for nearly 3 decades. The comparative context within the broader Jefferson nickel series shows that the 1993D severe die clash occupies a unique position among modern varieties. While earlier dates are famous for low mintage or composition changes, and wartime issues are collected for their silver content, the 1993D die clash represents a different kind of rarity entirely, a minting error of such dramatic visual impact and extreme scarcity that it transcends the normal parameters of Jefferson nickel collecting and enters the realm of major error coinage that appeals to specialists across multiple collecting categories. When to seek expert authentication is a question many collectors face, and for 1993D Jefferson nickels the answer depends on what you observe during careful examination. If you possess an example that shows any raised impressions on the reverse that might correspond to obverse design elements, you should submit it to PCGS or NGC for professional evaluation, because even minor clash states on this date can carry significant premiums, and severe clash examples in high grade represent life-changing financial discoveries. The research that uncovers hidden potential in modern coins like the 1993D Jefferson nickel requires dedication to understanding die states, clash progression, and the authentication standards that professional graders apply, and this is precisely the kind of substantive knowledge that separates informed collectors from those who dismiss modern coins as inherently common. What was happening in America when this coin was minted adds another layer of appreciation for those of us who remember 1993 personally. The internet was just beginning to transform how Americans communicated and conducted business. Cell phones were still rare luxury items rather than universal accessories, and the numismatic community relied heavily on printed price guides and coin shows for market information. Yet even in that technologically primitive era by today's standards, the coins we handled included treasures that would eventually be recognized through the more sophisticated authentication and grading systems that developed in subsequent decades. Share this information with fellow collectors who appreciate substantive content, and subscribe to NEXA VAULT for continued quality research that honors your experience and intelligence as a numismatist who deserves better than the clickbait that dominates so much online coin content. The legacy and inheritance angles surrounding 1993 D. Jefferson nickels are particularly relevant for our audience of mature collectors. Many of you may have collections or accumulations from the 1990s that were assembled without any particular strategy, perhaps from bankrolls purchased during that era or from mint sets that were stored and forgotten. And within those holdings could be 1993 D nickels with die clash characteristics that represent extraordinary value if they happen to be high-grade examples with professional certification. The technical knowledge that reveals value in these coins extends beyond die clash identification to include understanding full steps designation, repunched mint marks, and other anomalies that professional numismatists document in authoritative references, and while the severe die clash represents the most valuable recognized variety on this date, the potential for additional undiscovered die states remains an exciting possibility for dedicated researchers who examine enough examples. The market analysis for 1993 D die clashed Jefferson nickels indicates sustained and likely increasing demand as more error collectors and Jefferson nickel specialists compete for the extremely limited supply of certified examples, and with grading populations remaining at levels that can be counted on two hands. Each new auction appearance tends to generate intense bidding competition that reinforces the coin's status as a legitimate numismatic treasure of the highest order. For the mature collector who appreciates authenticity and substance over hype, the 1993 D Jefferson nickel with severe die clash represents everything that makes numismatics a rewarding pursuit: the intellectual satisfaction of understanding complex minting processes, the visual thrill of examining a coin that bears unmistakable evidence of its dramatic creation, and the financial validation that comes when market prices reflect genuine rarity verified by the most respected professional grading services in the world. The investment potential, while never guaranteed and always subject to market fluctuations, is supported by documented auction results, extraordinarily restrictive population reports, and growing collector awareness that makes this one of the most compelling opportunities in modern American era coinage for those willing to do the research, exercise the patience, and maintain the standards that serious collecting demands. Next, 1965 Jefferson nickel. Think back to 1965. A year when American sons were being drafted for service in Vietnam. The Beatles released "Help" and dominated radio waves across the nation. A new Ford Mustang cost just under $2,500, and the United States Mint was in the midst of a historic transition that would forever alter the composition of American coinage. At a heritage auctions sale in 2022, a 1965 Jefferson nickel certified by PCGS in MS67 full steps with a dramatic multiple strike error and partial brockage realized an extraordinary $95 million, establishing what stands as the highest documented price ever paid for a Jefferson nickel and fundamentally reshaping how collectors and investors view transitional year coinage from the mid-1960s. That remarkable sale was the culmination of years of gradual recognition that 1965 represents one of the most significant and misunderstood years in American numismatic history, a year when the Mint eliminated mint marks from all coinage in an attempt to discourage speculation during the coin shortage crisis, when composition changes were being implemented across multiple denominations, and when production pressures were so intense that quality control suffered dramatically, creating conditions ripe for the kind of spectacular minting errors that serious collectors now prize above almost all other Jefferson nickel varieties. The 1965 Jefferson nickel was struck during a period of extraordinary turmoil at the United States Mint, with Director Eva Adams implementing the controversial decision to remove mint marks entirely from coins struck in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, a policy that would remain in effect through 1967 and that has created lasting confusion among collectors who struggle to distinguish between mint facilities for these dates. Here's where the technical details get really interesting. The multiple strike error with partial brockage that commands such staggering value on the 1965 Jefferson nickel occurs when a coin is struck multiple times by dies, with at least one strike occurring while the coin was not fully seated in the collar, resulting in overlapping images, expanded diameters, and in the case of partial brockage, mirror image impressions from a previously struck coin that became lodged in the die and transferred its design in reverse orientation to subsequent strikes. The documented auction history reveals something fascinating about how market perception evolves for complex error varieties on transitional year coinage. Before 2018, most dealers and collectors considered 1965 Jefferson nickels to be common circulation issues with no particular premium beyond face value, and the absence of mint marks made them particularly unappealing to specialists who traditionally focused on date and mint mark combinations. But as error coin collecting gained mainstream respectability and as advanced collectors began recognizing the extreme rarity of major minting anomalies on 1965 nickels, prices escalated from modest premiums to absolutely stratospheric levels at heritage auctions, Stack's Bowers, and great collections. If you're finding this information valuable, I'd appreciate your subscription to NEXA VAULT so we can continue bringing you thoroughly researched content that respects your intelligence and experience as a collector who has witnessed decades of market evolution and understands that genuine numismatic knowledge takes years to develop and verify through careful study. The grading populations tell an important story about why this specific variety commands such serious attention in today's market. PCGS has certified only 3 examples of the 1965 Jefferson nickel with multiple strike and partial brockage designation in grades of MS65 and above, with a single MS67 example representing the finest known specimen and the coin that established the $95 million record, while NGC has certified no examples of this specific error combination, making the PCGS certified pieces the only professionally authenticated specimens in existence and creating a market dynamic where supply is essentially non-existent relative to demand from the world's most advanced collectors. Understanding the minting process explains why complex errors of this magnitude are so extraordinarily rare on any coinage, but particularly on 1965 Jefferson nickels where production pressures were unprecedented. During the mid-1960s coin shortage, the United States Mint was operating at maximum capacity around the clock, with dies being pushed far beyond their normal lifespan, planchets being fed at speeds that compromised quality control, and equipment being maintained on schedules that prioritized quantity over precision. Yet even in these chaotic conditions, the specific combination of multiple strikes and partial brockage required a precise sequence of mechanical failures that would be nearly impossible to replicate intentionally and extraordinarily unlikely to occur even under the most adverse production circumstances. The authentication details professionals use for 1965 Jefferson nickel major errors are complex and require extensive expertise that separates legitimate specimens from cleverly altered coins or minor minting anomalies that do not rise to the level of major error designation. The multiple strike characteristics must show clear evidence of at least 2 distinct strikes with different orientations. The partial brockage must display mirror image design elements that correspond exactly to the normal obverse or reverse design, and the overall coin must exhibit physical characteristics consistent with the extreme pressure and metal displacement that occur during such dramatic minting accidents. Fellow collectors, if this analysis has been helpful, consider subscribing and sharing with others who appreciate serious numismatic information grounded in documented facts rather than the sensationalized content that unfortunately dominates much of online coin collecting discourse and that does a disservice to experienced collectors like yourselves who can detect hype and exaggeration instantly. The market demand for 1965 Jefferson nickels with major minting errors has been driven by several converging factors that experienced collectors recognize as legitimate market dynamics reflecting genuine rarity rather than artificial speculation. First, the 1965 date occupies a unique position in American numismatic history as the first year of the mint mark elimination policy, creating historical significance that transcends ordinary Jefferson nickel collecting and appeals to specialists who focus on transitional periods and mint policy changes. Second, complex multiple strike and brockage errors have gained increasing respect among error collectors who understand that these anomalies represent the most dramatic and visually spectacular minting mistakes possible, and the 1965 Jefferson nickel examples stand as among the finest documented major errors in the entire modern American coinage series. Third, the virtually non-existent grading populations mean that when a quality example surfaces at auction, competition is absolutely ferocious among the small number of advanced collectors with the resources and collecting focus to pursue such extraordinary pieces, and prices reflect genuine desperation to acquire specimens that may not appear again for decades. What separates valuable from common versions of the 1965 Jefferson nickel is immediately apparent once you understand what to look for, and this is information even experienced collectors might miss if they haven't examined recent era coin research or population reports with the attention these extraordinary pieces deserve. A common 1965 nickel in circulated condition remains worth exactly 5 cents, and even uncirculated examples without major error designation trade at minimal premiums because the absence of mint marks and the enormous production quantities make ordinary specimens genuinely common. But the same coin with multiple strike and partial brockage certification in MS65 or higher represents a fundamentally different category of numismatic asset that commands prices measured in tens of millions of dollars and that belongs in the most advanced collections and museum displays. The condition factors that create dramatic value differences across the grading spectrum are particularly pronounced for major era varieties like the 1965 Jefferson nickel multiple strike with brockage. MS60 through MS63 examples with the error designation, while theoretically scarce, would trade at substantial premiums but not extraordinary levels because contact marks and luster impairment detract from the visual impact of the error and because collectors at this level of investment demand pristine surfaces that showcase the dramatic minting anomaly in its full glory. But once you reach MS65 the price curve enters truly astronomical territory, and by MS67 you're in the realm where auction records are established and the world's wealthiest collectors compete without regard to conventional price expectations. The discovery accounts for 1965 Jefferson nickel major errors reveal a fascinating pattern that collectors should consider when evaluating their own holdings and inherited collections. Unlike modern errors that are often discovered in mint sets or bankrolls, the finest 1965 error examples have typically surfaced from old collections that were assembled during the 1960s and 1970s by collectors who recognized something unusual about specific pieces even before professional grading services existed to authenticate and certify such anomalies, and these collections, often passed down through families or sold at estate auctions after decades of storage, have yielded some of the most spectacular Jefferson nickel errors ever documented. Your subscription and engagement help us invest in better research and content, so if you're finding this worthwhile, I'd welcome your support as we continue exploring these remarkable numismatic discoveries that challenge everything we thought we knew about which coins hold genuine value. For those examining their own collections, the authentication details professionals use are extraordinarily important because the high values associated with 1965 Jefferson nickel major errors have attracted counterfeiters and those who attempt to create artificial errors through mechanical manipulation, practices that professional graders at PCGS and NGC detect through microscopic examination, metallurgical analysis, and comparison with authenticated specimens, but that can fool collectors who lack the training and equipment to evaluate such pieces properly. The historical context behind the 1965 Jefferson nickel enriches our understanding of why this coin matters beyond its extraordinary monetary value and speaks directly to those of us who lived through this turbulent period in American history. 1965 was a year of profound social and political change, with the Voting Rights Act being signed into law, American combat troops arriving in Vietnam in significant numbers, and the nation grappling with civil rights protests and cultural upheaval that would define the decade. Yet even in this period of intense national focus on matters far more important than coinage, the mint was producing 5-cent pieces that would eventually become recognized as among the most valuable American coins ever struck. The comparative context within the broader Jefferson nickel series shows that the 1965 major error examples occupy a position of unique distinction. While earlier dates are famous for low mintage or composition changes, and wartime silver issues are collected for their precious metal content, and modern full steps varieties are prized for condition rarity, the 1965 multiple strike with partial brockage represents something entirely different, a convergence of historical significance, transitional year importance, and the most dramatic type of minting error possible, creating a numismatic object that appeals to specialists across multiple collecting disciplines and that transcends the normal boundaries of Jefferson nickel specialization. When to seek expert authentication is a question that every collector should take seriously, and for 1965 Jefferson nickels the answer is particularly urgent given the extraordinary values involved. If you possess any 1965 Jefferson nickel that appears to show doubling, extra images, expanded diameter, or any unusual characteristics that might suggest a minting error, you should submit it immediately to PCGS or NGC for professional evaluation, because even minor error states on this date can carry significant premiums, and major error examples in high grade represent financial discoveries of life-altering magnitude that deserve the most careful authentication possible. The research that uncovers hidden potential in coins like the 1965 Jefferson nickel requires dedication to understanding error classification, strike mechanics, and the authentication standards that professional graders apply with rigorous precision, and this is precisely the kind of substantive knowledge that separates informed collectors from those who dismiss mid-1960s coinage as inherently common without understanding the extraordinary exceptions that exist within even the most heavily produced dates. What was happening in America when this coin was minted adds a deeply personal dimension for those of us who remember 1965, whether we were handling these nickels as children buying candy at corner stores, serving in Vietnam, raising young families, or beginning careers that would span decades. And the knowledge that the coins passing through our hands during this formative period included potential treasures worth millions of dollars creates a powerful connection between our personal histories and the numismatic discoveries we continue to make today. Share this information with fellow collectors who appreciate substantive content, and subscribe to NEXA VAULT for continued quality research that honors your experience and intelligence as a numismatist who has earned the right to expect better than the superficial content that dominates so much of the online coin collecting world. The legacy and inheritance angles surrounding 1965 Jefferson nickels are profoundly meaningful for our audience of mature collectors. Many of you have collections or accumulations from the 1960s that were assembled without any awareness of error coin potential, perhaps from pocket change saved in coffee cans, bank rolls purchased during that era, or collections started by parents who simply found certain coins interesting. And within those holdings could be 1965 Jefferson nickels with error characteristics that represent extraordinary value if they happen to be genuine major error examples with professional certification. Making careful examination of any 1965 nickels in your possession an absolutely essential priority. The technical knowledge that reveals value in these coins extends far beyond basic error identification to include understanding the progression of die states, the metallurgical characteristics of 1965 planchets, the striking pressure variations that occurred during this period of intense production, and the specific diagnostic features that professional graders examine when authenticating major errors. And while the multiple strike with partial brockage represents the most valuable recognized variety on this date, the potential for additional undiscovered error combinations remains an exciting and realistic possibility for dedicated researchers who examine enough examples with patience and proper equipment. The market analysis for 1965 Jefferson nickel major errors indicates sustained and likely increasing demand as more advanced collectors recognize the historical significance and extreme scarcity of these pieces, and with grading populations so low that the finest known examples can be counted on a single hand. Each new auction appearance generates bidding competition of extraordinary intensity that reinforces the coin's status as a legitimate numismatic treasure of the highest possible order. For the mature collector who appreciates authenticity, substance, and genuine expertise over hype and sensationalism, the 1965 Jefferson nickel with multiple strike and partial brockage error represents everything that makes numismatics a deeply rewarding pursuit, the intellectual satisfaction of understanding complex minting processes and error mechanics, the emotional connection to a pivotal year in American history that many of us remember vividly, the visual thrill of examining a coin that bears dramatic and unmistakable evidence of its extraordinary creation, and the financial validation that comes when market prices reflect genuine rarity of the most extreme kind verified by the most respected professional grading services in the world. The investment potential, while never guaranteed and always subject to the market fluctuations that affect all collectible assets, is supported by documented auction results that speak for themselves, extraordinarily restrictive population reports that confirm virtual non-existence of certified examples, and growing collector awareness among sophisticated investors who understand that coins like the 1965 Jefferson nickel major era represent genuine stores of value backed by historical significance and authenticated scarcity rather than speculative hope. I want to express my genuine appreciation for your attention and your commitment to serious numismatic knowledge, and I encourage you to subscribe to NEXA VAULT if you value the thorough research and respectful presentation you have experienced in this video, to share this information with fellow collectors who appreciate substantive content that honors their intelligence and experience, and to examine your personal collections carefully with the understanding that extraordinary treasures can exist in the most unexpected places, including among the humble Jefferson nickels that many collectors have overlooked for decades. Your comments, discoveries, and experiences are always welcome, and I remain committed to bringing you the highest quality research and analysis that the numismatic community deserves, because collectors like you, with your decades of experience, your skepticism of hype, and your genuine passion for this remarkable hobby, are the reason that serious numismatic content matters and will continue to thrive in an age of superficiality and misinformation. Thank you for your time, your trust, and your dedication to the pursuit of numismatic knowledge that enriches our understanding of American history, minting technology, and the enduring value of carefully authenticated rare coins.